Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashyakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaye Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Nama Pranavarthaye Shuddha Jnanaikamurtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaye Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Navirato dushcharitat
नाविरतो दुष्चरितात्
Nashanto na samahitah
नाशान्तो न समाहितः
Nashantamanaso vapi
न शान्तमानसो वापि
Prajnanenainamapnuyat.
प्रज्ञानेनैनमाप्नुयात्.
Anything that can cause disturbance in the mind. And the biggest factor for that is duscharita. When one transcends dharma, when one does karma which is prohibited by Shastra, clearly there will be agitation. However much one might deny it, the fact is that internally there is disturbance every time we do something incorrect. It is not that we don't do our prescribed duty like Sandhya Vandanam, for example. That is not the problem. The problem is when Shastra specifically prohibits something and we go and do that, then it does create disturbance. And any disturbance internally is a setback. Will prevent this Atma Jnanam, this Atma which is Anuraniyan, Mahato Mahiyan, Asharira Sharireshu, all those paradoxes. To understand that and to assimilate it becomes impossible. Because Atma is I. And therefore all these paradoxes. So in the previous verses, Yamadharmaraja had talked about the nature of Atma. And now he goes on to say that nature of Atma you cannot absorb, you cannot assimilate if certain conditions are not fulfilled. And one of the biggest conditions which is covered in this particular mantra is Shanti. Unless the mind is well prepared through certain basic jnanam, not by necessarily by forcefully staying away from any karma. That is not what is meant here. Karma by itself is not the problem. We have seen that before. Karma is also Ishvara. That is not the problem. It is the dharma viruddho kama. It is driven by adharma, which kama many times pushes us into. Knowing that that is adharma, knowing that it's prohibited, justifying it to ourselves, justifying it to the world, creates agitation and therefore makes it impossible, not even just difficult. The least it will do is delay the whole process of understanding. Of this understanding of Atma, as it is difficult enough to understand. Our entire focus in life is knowing objects. Objects which are outside of what I consider I. I, the individual, I am convinced of. Shastra says there is no such thing as an individual. You have to absorb that. There is no individual. Requires a lot of contemplative thinking, which we cannot do unless the mind is clear. Therefore, all those Viveka, Vairagya, Shamadhamadi, Shatka Sampatti, etc., all of which lead to a certain preparedness of the mind. And therefore, he brings out this one point saying, Na avirataha duscharitat. Duscharitat is Panchami. Not shying away from, not desisting from incorrect actions. Like I said, all double negatives. Not withdrawing from. Knowing that what I'm doing now is incorrect. Shastra says, Kalanjam na bhakshet, suram na pibet. And yet, because of various kinds of peer pressure, various kinds of other temptations, we might go and do that. And it will create a problem. So, avirataha duscharitat. Avirataha is doing away with, abandoning, not giving up, not desisting from doing what is incorrect. And what does that do? Ashanta manaha. That leads to ashanti. Even worldly knowledge is difficult to penetrate if the mind is not shanta. And this knowledge, with all these paradoxes, just doesn't get in. So either one tends to give up, or one tends to justify what one is doing. Ashanta. Na ashantaha, na asamahitaha. Samahitaha is what? Samyak ahita chitta yasya saha. Whose mind stays focused, whose mind is not distracted. asamahitah. Again, all double-netted. Na ashantah, na asamahitah. That word is again repeated. Na ashanta manasaha vapi. That we saw yesterday. Acharya says, samahita chittaha api, even though the mind may be focused, samahita chittaha api sanna samadhana phalarthitvat. The focus is on saying, I have control. That is what is called samahita. Means like, in Yoga Sutra, samadhanam, same thing. I'm focused on the phala I get on that rather than saying, I do it because that is what I need to do. So if I'm focused on the phala of that, I'm not even a karma yogi. Forget about becoming jnani. In Mahabharatam, there's a very nice verse which when Shankaracharya of Sringeri had come to address us at Anekati, he quoted. It goes something like this. Dharma dharma tyaje. Give up dharma and adharma. Not only adharma, give up dharma also. Remember the very question that Nachiketa asked was, what is that transcends dharma and adharma? Ube satyam anritancha. All the satyam, anritam, dharma, adharma belong to the jagat. It don't belong to paramarthika. The second line is even interesting. Ubhe, I don't remember the exact word, but something like Ubhe, Chaktva, having given that up, Yena tyajet tatapi tajet. By which you have given that up, give that also up. Give that up, by which you give it up. Now, how do you give it up? The ego comes into play. I did it. That also has to go. So here, Acharya says, samahita chitta api sanna, even being samahita chitta, single-pointed, focused. Chitta samadhanam is there, contentment is there. Even then, samadhana phalarthitvat, focus being on the phala, na api ashanta manasaha. Then also, manas does not have shanti. Acharya says, vikshipta chitta. No, sorry. Vyaprita chitta. Vyaprita chitta is mind which is occupied, busy, occupied by having achieved that result. In the Jagat, we have this great satisfaction we have if we complete a Sudoku, a tough one. There's a sense of, I've done it. Anything, any puzzle you solve, any problem you solve, at the end of it, once you've solved it, there's a great feeling of pleasure, satisfaction. Like that, here also he says, samahita chittaha api, because the focus is on that achievement, that also does not lead to manashanti. Vyaprita chittaha. So anything which is desire driven, whether it is negative or positive, doesn't matter. Negative, positive belong to the Jagat. Even when I say, no, I am doing dharmic activity, even that is not necessary. A couple of years ago, this one fellow got the Nobel Prize, He was rescuing child labor. I forget his name now. Great job he did, and he deserved a Nobel Prize. But even that activity leads to certain amount of agitation. Therefore, he says, dharma dharmam tyajet. Dharma, adharma, everything belongs to Jagat. Give up all of that. And that by which you give up all of that, give that also up. Don't focus on saying the result. But the preparation for moksha jnanam is clearly manashanti. And anything which is karma driven, yesterday I quoted, you see somebody having a BMW 7 Series. I don't know why the BMW 7 Series gets stuck in my head. Maybe at some point of time in my life, I also had a hankering for a 7 Series BMW. So it got stuck in my head. But it's true, anything could be anything. Like I said, it could even be something very positive. It's like saying, you hear somebody, these days you get some very wonderful programs on TV on music. Small young children playing instruments, singing so beautifully. God-given gift. And then look at them and say, my God, I wish I could sing like that. That also is a distraction. Same thing with grammar. While grammar is necessary, Vyakaranam is necessary for us to study Bashyam. Otherwise, we will not even understand which is Panchami and why Panchami. But only to that extent. Because you could get really sunk into Vyakaranam. Then what you really wanted will get delayed that much more. The BMW 7 Series, like I said, keeps coming into my head, but could be anything. I showed you one little boat, toy boat, which I found when I was about 7, 8 years old. I was fascinated by the boat. You put a little flame into that, and the steam comes out and it goes put, going running around the tub. I was so fascinated by that I asked my parents to buy one for me. They bargained with him and he wouldn't come down, so they never bought it. Something I missed. Some of you have shown, okay, I think I might still have it here. That is the boat. And a couple of years ago, I found it in some market. I said, I must buy this for my own reference. How that became my greatest loss. Anything which is distracting, because you want something, the want pulls one down. So, Amiji, you're asking it to drop all growth, progress, development. No. I'm only saying, understand where they stand in the whole gamut of things. It only stand as far as the toy boat goes. Anything, including a BMW 7 Series. Only as much as that. No more than that. As long as one has clarity saying what I want is moksha jnanam, everything else becomes secondary. And for that, I have Shraddha in the Shastra, and Shastra says, develop Shanti. So I work towards that. And therefore, I judge all my actions based on whether this action, this desire is going to help me in that ultimate goal or is going to pull me away from that goal. Only test. There's no other test required. Which can decide what I need to do. I just need, there are some things I need to do. My duty. Fair enough, but I need to understand the place of that in the scheme of things. Where is it? Samahita chittaha api san samadhana phalastitvat na api ashanta manasaha vyaprita chittaha va. Mind which is occupied with this. And then the last pada, prajnanena enam apnuyat. Only through this Atma Jnanam is not going to be got by anybody who is not ready, whose mind is not well prepared. Then how am I going to get it? One, we saw I must have clarity of my end goal. Mumukshutvam. I must have Shraddha in the Shastra because that is my pramana. And Shastra says, get ready. Understand the relative unimportance of everything else. Anything else that you want, you might want, work on it, but understand where they stand in the scheme of things. Then I can hope to gain Shanti. I can hope to be focused and concentrated on what I want while doing all that I have to do. I have to exist in this Jagat till Jnanam arises as a father, as a son, as an employee, as an employer, as a neighbor. And certain duties come automatically with all these roles. I have to do those duties. And yet I have to understand the relative value or valuelessness of these. Only through jnanam, prajnanena eva, can I gain this knowledge. Apnuyat, apnoti. Prajnanena,
Prajnanena,
brahma vijnanena,
Brahma Vijnanena,
enam prakritamatmanam,
Enam
Enam
prakritamatmanam
Pritamatmanam,
apnuyat.
apnuyat.
Only through Brahma Vijnanena, clarity of understanding of Brahma Jnanam, Atma Jnanam, Moksha Jnanam, all are the same thing. This, what is under discussion? Prakritam Atmanam Apnuyat. And for that, now Acharya rephrases the whole thing positively. Remember, the whole mantra is double negative. Acharya then rephrases it positively and says, Yaha tu
यः तु
दुश्चरितात् विरतः
दुश्चरितात् विरतः
इन्द्रियलौल्याश्च
इन्द्रियलौल्याश्च
समाहितचित्तः
समाहितचित्तः
फलादापि
समाधानफलादापि
उपशान्तमानसश्च
सुपशान्तमानसश्च
आचार्यवान्
आचार्यवान्
प्रज्ञानेन
प्रज्ञानेन
यथोक्तम् आत्मानं
आत्मानम्
प्राप्नोति इत्यर्थः.
प्राप्नोति इत्यर्थः।
That yatha uktam atmanam, that atmana which is subject to all the paradoxes, anuraniyan, mahato, mahiyan, etc., 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 that atma jnanam can be gained. So this is more positive rephrasement. By one who yahatu duscharitat viratah, who abandons, who desists from wrong actions, duscharitat, who is not distracted by objects of the senses, whose focus is unquestioned, samahita chittaha, and not for gaining that sense of satisfaction, saying that I've completed the Sudoku. That I has to be dropped. I heard somewhere very beautiful, somebody went to a Guru and he said, Guruji, I want to be happy. I've recognized this much, that what I want is, I want to be happy. So Guruji told him, very easy. Drop the want and drop the I. What you have is only happiness. Drop the want, drop the I. What you left is only happiness. Ananda Swarupa. A beautiful expression. As long as that ahankara is there, I sense is there, I will always be under the wrong impression of that mistake that I'm committing. Samadhana phalat api upashanta manasascha. So he brings in this samadhana phala, that also should not become the focus. Upashanta manasascha, and then he brings in one more factor. It is not there in the mantra. Acharyavan Purusha Veda. Chandogya Upanishad. You have to have a teacher who is a Shrotriya Brahmanishta. Therefore, he brings in a Acharyavan, one who has an Acharyavan, Dhanavan, etc. You have to understand the pratyaya. Buddhiman, Dhanavan. Dhanam, everybody has some of it in any case. But you don't call everybody a Dhanavan. You call only that person who has a certain amount of Dhanam, you call Dhanavan. Everybody has Buddhi. There is no human being who doesn't have Buddhi. But that Buddhi, which is discriminative, which even for Karma Yoga we saw, has certain ability to distinguish right and wrong. That Buddhi which understands that there's something to know, And that I have to be a jignasu to know that. That kind of buddhi, a sukshma buddhi. So that acharyavan, anybody can have an acharya. We saw earlier also, narena avrena na is not possible to get. You can have any, but you should have the acharya who can unfold it for you. Therefore, an acharya who is Shrotriya Brahmashatti, that person is an acharya one. Therefore, acharyavan Purusha Veda. That Atmanam Yatoktam Atmanam Prapnoti. Such a person gains the Atma as has been outlined earlier. More details will follow in the other valleys. More ways of trying to understand the nature of Atma. How to understand the Atma. What do I do to gain that Atma? Knowledge of the Atma. All that will follow. But already it's been introduced by saying all those Anuraniya, Mahato, Mahiyan, etc., etc. That Atma, whose phala is moksha. The jnanam of which phala is moksha. That also has been outlined. That is available to a person who has all these positive qualities through certain amount of jnanam. This being like that, this being so, this Atma that you have to understand is everything. He is the whole Jagat, the whole society, tangible, intangible, living, non-living, everything is nothing but that Atma. So this Valli winds up with one Aupacharika statement. In any society, the survival of the society depends upon every element of society for sure. But two key elements which represent the whole society. The ones who have sattva predominant qualities. Brahmana, who are called Brahmana. Who are the teachers, conscience keepers, who one can go to understand in a particular situation, dharma, dharma, all of that. Who give us the framework in which the society has to live. Ultimate goal for every member of the society is moksha. Even if each member does not recognize it. But the ultimate goal is moksha. And we have seen Bhagavan saying in the Bhagavad Gita also, Nishtraya guno bhavarjuna. You have to go from tamasa predominant guna to rajasa predominant guna to sattva predominant guna, and then eventually cross that also. That means you take charge of Maya. You are then the Mayan. So the one who is sattva predominant. Now, not everybody in the society can be sattva predominant. Now, others have to be guided into that. Guided away from tamas, away from rajas. Rajas, we saw, will create agitation. Doing any kind of activity driven by rajas will create agitation. So there has to be another set of people who will guide the entire society physically, setting up laws, administer the society, give duties to everybody, make sure that people follow the duties. The police, the army, the administrators. So you can think of the ones who create the law and the ones who implement the law. The Kshatriyas. Only then the society can hope to gain movement towards moksha as a whole society. So taking these two as aupacharikam, very nice. No, entire society, everything in the society is nothing but Atma. But just taking these two, his mantra says, Yasya brahmasya kshatram cha
Yasya Brahma
Kshatranja
ubhe bhavata odanah
उभे भवत ओदनः
mrityur yasyopasechanam
Mrityuryasyopasechanam
ita veda yatra sah.
क इत्था वेदयसः
Very beautiful expression of the nature of Atma. That Atma, Brahman, I, for whom the entire Jagat is food. And the entire Jagat here is represented by Brahmana and Kshatriya. They are the pillars of society, they are conscience keepers. They bring about the rules, framework of rules, and they implement the framework of rules. Governors, but include the entire Jagat. Does that mean that Vaishyas and Shudras are not included? No, they're included as well. Yasya, for whom Brahmana and Kshatriya, Brahma cha Kshatrancha, Ubhe Bhavata Odana, are both food to be consumed. Implying thereby that everything, Brahmana, Kshatriya, the society, the rules of the society, everything is nothing but that Brahman, Atma. And the second line is even more interesting. We say Kalaha Jagat Bhakshakaha. Everything in the Jagat is time bound. Is eaten up by Lord Yama. Whether it's tangible or intangible, it is destroyed in time. Even mountains are destroyed in time. Long time perhaps, but they're destroyed. So Kala, Yamadharmaraja, is Bhakshaka, Jagat Bhakshaka, eats the entire Jagat. Even that Kala is eaten up by Atma. That Kala is also Atma dependent. Kala includes also space. Therefore he says, Mrityuhu yasya upasechanam. Upasechanam is side dish. So you have idli and you have chutney. And this chutney is not your main dish. It's not, this kala is not even the main dish that Atma is going to gobble up. It will not even satisfy Atma's hunger. Imagery. In fact, it is pickle. You don't eat pickle like a vegetable. You don't serve yourself a whole lot of pickles and try to eat it. Half a spoon, 1 spoon. So, upasechanam, side dish. For whom even kala and desha are nothing. Such an Atma, which has already been described in so many words earlier. How can anybody know this Atma? Yamadharmaraja is raising a rhetoric. All this I have said to you. I'm sure you're in your mind, you're asking, my God, it's so difficult. How am I ever going to learn this? How am I ever going to understand it? He's saying it because later he's going to explain how you're going to get it. That is the whole purpose of Upanishad. Ka ittha veda yatra saha. Who is going to gain this knowledge? Who can know what this Atma is, the self is? Meaning it's not easy to know. Bashyam. Yasya atmanah
यस्य आत्मनः
आत्मनः
my internet, it says is unstable. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yasya atmanah
Yes.
यस्य आत्मनः
आत्मनः
brahmacha kshatrancha
ब्रह्मक्षत्रञ्च
brahmakshatre
ब्रह्मक्षत्रे
sarvadharma vidarakepi
सर्वधर्मविधारकेऽपि
sarvatrana bhute
सर्वत्राणभूते
ubhe odanah
उभे
ओदनः
ashanam bhavatah
अशनं भवतः
ashanah syatam
स्याताम्
yasya, for whom atmanah, same Shashti, for the Atma, brahmacha kshatramcha. That is taken directly from the mantra. Brahmacha kshatramcha. And Acharya says, brahmakshatre, makes a compound of it. Brahmakshatre, dvivachanam. What kind of brahmakshatra? What does it represent? Sarva dharma vidarakaha api. The protector of all dharma. All dharma meaning all dharmas which are applicable in the Jagat. Any law, Kula dharma, my ashrama dharma, all of the dharmas, vidarakaha api. Therefore, which means the entire society, the ones who create the dharma, the rules of the dharma, and who protect the dharma, who ensure the dharma is followed. Brahma and Kshatra. Sarvatrana bhute, meaning all beings, covers all beings, represents all bhutas. That means the entire Jagat, for whom the entire Jagat, here represented by Kshatra and Brahma, Sarvatrana bhute ubhe odanaha, are only sapadu. So the whole Jagat is consumed. Meaning whole Jagat has no existence of its own. that Atma which is the only thing that is, only substantive. I don't want to use that word, but only adhishthanam. Ashanam bhavataha becomes food for whom? Bhavataha syatam. Sarvaharopi
सर्वरूपी
मृत्युः यस्य उपसेचनम्
मृत्युः यस्य उपसेचनम्
एव
उपसेचनम्
ओदनस्य
इव ओदनस्य
अशनत्वे अपि
अशनत्वेनपि
अपर्याप्तः.
अपर्याप्तः.
This side dish is not even a regular dish. It's not. It is aparyapta. It is not enough. And that kala and desha are like the side dish. By themselves also not everything inclusive. Desha, kala, vastu, all kinds. All inclusive, even though Acharya makes it here. Upasechanam eva odanasya ashanatve api aparyaptaha. It's just a small pickle-like thing in the side, or a chutney. By itself is not even food. So even though sarvaharaha pi, kalaha we know is jagat bhakshakaha, it eats up everything. Even that is not even food for Atma. It's only an inadequate side dish. Tam prakrita buddhihi
Tam
प्राकृत बुद्धिः
yatokta sadhanahitah san
यथोक्त साधन रहित
ka itta ittamevam
इत्थमेवम्
yatokta sadhanavan iva ityarthah.
यथोक्त
साधनं विना
So for it's a repetition of what he said earlier. Prakrita buddhihi, whose natural tendencies are to make some assumptions. That tam atmanam prakrita buddhihi, which is without these things which have been already talked about, manashanti, etc., which have been talked about in the last two mantras, yatokta sadhana rahitaha. We don't have those. Sadhana rahitaha sanna kaha ittha yatokta sadhanavan iva ityarthaha. They cannot gain this. They have to be prepared. Therefore, it says, ka itta veda yatra saha. What is Veda? Vijanati. Yatra saha atma iti kaha vijanati. How will anybody know? He's going to tell us later how we'll know how to know. But here he's saying this atma which is bhakshakaha for everything, including kala, which we know to be jagat bhakshaka. That atma, how can anybody know unless the mind is very well prepared? Atma is everything. That atma is I. How am I ever going to know? So, kaha itta veda. How will somebody know this? Saha? How will somebody know this? Iti dvitiya valli bhashyam.
द्वितीयं
Second valli He's building up this nature of Atma, trying to build up, saying, how do we understand something like this? It is so difficult. Our mind does not grasp paradoxes easily. And Atma is nothing but paradoxes as long as you look at it from the Vyavaharika perspective. Unless one can change one's perspective, that paradox will continue to remain. How to change that? He will cover in the further Valli. How to change my perspective, how to try and understand Atma. Not just understand Atma, but understand I as Atma. Will come in the next Valli. We finished the first two Vallis. Any doubts, questions, comments, observations, please send to Jayaji. He has kindly agreed to consolidate all of them. We will use the next class, depending upon how many such things are there, either one class or two classes, to both summarize the first two Vallis and to address all these queries. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya
पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते
Om
ॐ
Shanti
शान्ति
Shanti
शान्ति
Shanti.
शान्तिः